Om. 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 Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Japyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Twameva Mata Cha Pita Twameva Twameva Bandhuscha Sakha Twameva Twameva Vidyadravinam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishabhai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are in our 16th chapter, Divine and Devilish Estate. And we started off with some of the qualities of head and heart and action that are conducive to moksha, to freedom. So what verse are we on this evening?
3.
Verse 3.
Will you help us out, please?
Teja Kshama Dhriti Shaucha Matroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Devim Vijatasya Bharata. Vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, purity, absence of hatred, absence of pride. These belong to the one born for the divine estate.
Yes. So let's go again, parsing our way through these qualities. The first one.
Vigor.
Is that Viriam?
Teja.
Which one?
Teja.
Teja. I would translate that as brilliance.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But it also in the translation says brilliant glow.
Usually when we think of Tejas, we mean someone with, a subtle, bright mind.
Yeah, so Swamiji's commentary says this is not about the physical glow of complexion brought about by good food and rest. This is the spiritual glow.
Yes.
And vigor that comes from there.
I'm not sure I would use the word vigor. The next idea?
Forgiveness.
Yeah. So here's a slogan that might be useful. Resentment is a poison we brew for another and drink ourselves. It is corrosive to the heart. Yogis cannot afford to hang on to deep resentment and hatred. We have to learn to forgive, Jim, I can't forgive. I'm too wounded. It hurt too badly. I can't forgive. Anybody been in that mind state? How do we do it? The first stage in forgiveness is empathy. So there's a popular slogan we hear today: you spot it, you got it. Or if I point the finger over there, there's three more over here. So when someone has done something to hurt or harm or offend us, it's of value to look. Where in my past have I done something similar? Maybe not to the same degree. And if we're honest, we're not always free from blame. When I behave that way, almost always, it's because of fear or hurt. I lash out, I say unkind things, I do things out of fear and hurt. I'm not a monster. I'm just a broken person. Hurt people, they say. So if we can come to see that the other person, like ourselves, has their own brokenness, we can start to let them off the hook of being an evil bastard or whatever it is. This does not condone their behavior. They may have done really hurtful things. But if we can begin to understand, I'm going to tell you a true story. So I came from an alcoholic home with a mother who had lots of mental problems. And I had a terrible time letting go. And what I was intuitively led to do was sit down and not write my story and my childhood and how I was abused and neglected and stuff like that, but to write her story. And then I began to remember, oh, yes, her father deserted their family in the midst of the Depression. Her mother remarried just for security, and I had pretty strong suspicions that this guy fiddle faddled a really good looking young teenage stepdaughter. Her mother was really shut down emotionally because of the tragedy. My mother joined the Marine Corps to get out of Iowa. And I can go on and on and on. And I could see her brokenness. And that became the doorway to empathy, compassion, pathos, to feel with the person. And that became the doorway to forgiveness. Now we have to be aware of the fact that the world and its people are oftentimes quite wrong. People do really horrible stuff. So we want to get out of the conversation, I'm right and they're wrong, or they are right and I'm wrong. It's not about that. Even if the other person did wrong things, hurtful things, I have a part. I have a part. I look for my participation in this. Where have I been selfish? Where have I been motivated by fear? Where have I perhaps been emotionally dishonest? Usually with myself. And if we are honest and do these kinds of inventories, we can begin to come to forgiveness. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, in the second chapter, there's a sutra that I love. Tapas Swadhyayeshwara Pranidhana Kriya Yoga. Austerity, self-study, trustful surrender to God is yoga in action. So the way we practice it is from the inside out. It helps us forgive. In the Jnana Marga, in the Vedanta tradition, when we use the word swadhyaya, we usually mean our own study of scripture by ourselves. We hear it from the Guru, then we come home, we review it, revise it. In the Raja Yoga tradition, swadhyaya means psychological inventory. It means sitting down, sometimes pen to paper, or at least in my meditation, where I start to review what are my character strengths and what are the challenges that have plagued me, my kleshas. Klesha means afflictions. What are the things that afflict me? Then we move to the first one, tapas, austerity. I do my best to turn my mind away from those habitual negative modes of thinking. And then we come up against, I can't do it, I'm powerless over them, I keep spinning out till I go down the drain. So I need God's help. Ishvara Pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. So forgiveness is essential. If we hang on to deep resentments and hatreds and review them over and over again for years and years, it is likely that you will make yourself sick. They are that corrosive. They're that corrosive. And chances are the other person has moved on with their life. Resentment is a poison we brew for another, but drink ourselves. So when I can see that that person is spiritually sick, when I can see that that person is broken, when I see that that person is motivating from fear and hurt, maybe from their childhood, I can begin to move into pity. Pity gets a bad name. In our modern use of the word, it often has a connotation of condescension. Oh, look at that person, they're so miserable, I pity them. But the dictionary definition of pity is genuine sorrow at the misfortune of another. In the Christian canon, frequently you will hear, and Jesus saw that they were afflicted and took pity on them and healed them. He had genuine sorrow at the affliction of another. So if we can come to that place of tolerance, pity, and patience, then we can start to forgive. And if it's still hard, we ask God to grant us forgiveness. But I don't feel it, Jim. Start by just saying the words. So, and I forgive you, so and so. How many times should I forgive my neighbor? The Hebrew scripture says 7 times. The Master Jesus says 7 times 70. Why? Because it's hard. And remember the law of sankalpa. Whatever we look at, we're going to think about. What I look at repeatedly, I will think about repeatedly. Repeated thought becomes habituated thought. Habituated thought sinks into the unconscious and becomes the law of my life. So if I'm reviewing my miseries and how I've been done wrong by all these people, parents, employers, past lovers, and I go over it and over it and over it, it becomes what we call a vritti. Vritti is usually translated as just a thought or a thought pattern. But the root is vert, which means to turn. It's where we get the English word vortex. And that's what the mind starts to do. It starts to spin on these things. Who's ever been caught on just rehashing an old hurt over and over and over again, and you can't drop it? Yeah, that's a vritti. That's a vritti. So first we see it for what it is and keep the high watch. Behold the divinity ever beholding you. But if you behold the dust, dust you will become. That's what Emma Curtis Hopkins, a great American mystic, said. So this is the methodology for forgiveness. Any thoughts on this? It's an incredibly important practice. Most of us who've lived in this world for a bit may have some deeply rooted resentments, some deeply rooted pain. We need to be free from it. We need to practice forgiveness. Any thoughts? Next idea.
Fortitude.
Fortitude. What's the Sanskrit? Do you see?
Dhriti.
Dhriti, yeah, just literally strength. Yes. So this work takes steadfastness, fortitude, keep on keeping on. Now, a dear friend of mine has a slogan that I love. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. What? Well, think. If you've just started to do it and it's really hard, you're not going to be very good at it in the beginning. So do not let perfectionism be a barrier to your yoga. If you've only been able to meditate 2 times this week for 5 minutes, that's a good start. Keep on keeping on. Oh, Jim, I hear about yogis who meditate for 2 hours a day. I can't do that. There's no point in carrying on. No, that's the wrong attitude. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly in the beginning. Have fortitude. Be steadfast. keep on keeping on. Any thoughts on this? Next idea.
Purity.
Saucham
Yeah.
literally means cleanliness. But what it means is we want to keep our body and our environment in a sattvic state. Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, environment is stronger than will. So if you desire to have a calm, peaceful, ordered mind, and you go home and your house or your apartment's a wreck, the dishes aren't done and the laundry isn't done and your bed isn't made, and there's stuff lying around everywhere. It's not a sin, but frequently our environment reflects our mind state. You'll probably say, oh, I gotta get out of here, go outside. So here, it means bathe regularly, take care of your personal hygiene, do your laundry, keep your home ordered and sattvic. Doesn't mean you have to live in a monk's cell. You can have a nice home. But saucham, here purity actually means cleanliness. Means have this kind of outward purity and order and sattva, which then becomes conducive to inner tranquility. Who has had the experience where maybe you've been depressed, or maybe you've been super, super busy, you've let your housework go, the place is a mess, the laundry isn't done, you've been buying underwear because you haven't done laundry? I hear laughter. I guess I haven't been the only one to do that. Dishes aren't done. And then finally, I've got to clean this place up. And you scrub the floors, you do the dishes, scrub the counters, do your laundry, make the bed, dust, vacuum, maybe put some flowers out. And then all of a sudden you have a sense of satisfaction in your home. Who's had that experience? Yeah. Because our environment makes a difference to our mind states. Any thoughts on this? Next idea.
Absence of hatred.
Yes. This is the same kind of thing as the forgiveness. Yogis cannot live with deeply rooted hatred for anyone or anything. Well, what about those people who are bombing Gaza? You know, what about what the Russians are doing in Ukraine? Can't I hate them? So you can do whatever you want. But we use the same principle. Hurt people, hurt people. Now, there's a commentary. I don't know if this is Vyasa or this is Pandit Rajmani, but going through the yamas and niyamas in the Yoga Sutra, you might be able to help me out here, Daniel. He boils them all down to ahimsa. Did you read that too? Yes, no?
Yeah, I don't recall, but I've heard other teachers saying if you perfected any one of the 10, you know, 5 yamas or 5 niyamas, you end up getting them all.
Yeah, that's good. but non-violence in the world and toward yourself. I like that. I think that sums it all up very, very well. Why do I hate people? Why do I otherize people? To protect the small self. So we have to again cultivate love for everyone. I like to say God has no taste. God loves people that you and I would have nothing to do with. But we are enjoying to love as God loves. And it's a practice. It's a practice. To wish the well-being of everyone, even those who aren't behaving the way I think they should. Next idea.
Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
This is the thing that I find really, really difficult to do. Uh, it is okay to forgive, but to love someone that have hurt you, I find that very difficult. Like, I'll just saying, just do it, or is there just do it because you have to do it, or is there any way to ease the process of?
Yes. Yes. First of all, love is not just a feeling. I like to use the example of the new mother. If you know anybody who's got a brand new baby, by the third or fourth week, when that baby is shrieking all night long, and mommy hasn't had a full night's sleep, and God knows when. The baby's crying again, and she's walking the baby, and the baby won't stop crying. There's a piece of her that wants to throw it out the window. But her action is to care for the baby. So a place to start is with righteous action. Act in a righteous way. Now, we endeavor to love everyone, but as yogis, I'd be satisfied if you just come to a point of neutrality. But love is more than just an emotion. Love, the way most of us think of love, is third chakra, which is in many ways transactional. You do me, I'll do you. You stroke my ego, I'll stroke your ego. You show up for me and make me feel good, I'll show up for you and make you feel good. That's not the love I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Anahata chakra, the fourth chakra, which is the selfless love. The Greeks have a great way of talking about it. They have several words for love. You've got eros, which is carnal love. You've got philios, which is love for like a sibling or a very dear friend. But then you've got agape, which is usually translated as charity. It doesn't mean giving alms to the poor. It means giving with no thought of return. Loving because it's your nature. Swamiji used to say, my love is like a fire hose. Whoever gets in front of me gets blasted. He was rather indiscriminate. And all sorts of sketchy people would show up at a camp. And he loved them, could see where they were in their unfoldment, had compassion for them. And there were people who would turn around and say, oh, Swamiji's a devil. And, you know. But it's a good question to take to your inner wisdom. God, teach me how to love as you love. Ultimately, the Guru is inside you. Is that useful?
Yes.
Act as if. At the end of a Buddhist retreat, the participants always do the metta meditation. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be liberated. That's a prayer. That's an intention. They do it at the end of the retreat because people's minds are the most quiet. It's tantra in the end. It's a sankalpa. They do it because the intention is that it makes a difference in the world. That's love. Next verse. Or not verse, next idea.
Absence of pride.
Yes. There was an interview with a Western disciple of the Dalai Lama by a journalist. And the journalist says, well, what's he like? Because this guy got to hang out with him a lot. The fellow thought for a moment. He said, he's always the smallest person in the room. That doesn't mean His Holiness is short. That means that wherever he is, there's no agenda. There's no ego trip that he needs to run. Now, the opposite of pride is humility. And this is a definition I like. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. We have people who have as a habit self-deprecation. They think that's humility. Oh, I'm the worst at this. And no, I'm just the bad, or less. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Real humility is about small s, forgetting, self-abandonment. Now, when we practice the higher levels of jnana yoga, we're doing discrimination between the self and the not self, the real and the unreal. But before we get to that place, egoism wants to make itself either just a little bit better than everybody or a little bit worse than everybody. One of the pop psychology terms you hear is you're the piece of shit that the whole world revolves around. You're a person with low self-esteem and an ego complex. But the focus of it all is, how am I doing? Am I okay? What do they think of me? All of that, whether I think I'm the worst person in the world or a little better than everybody, are forms of pride. The opposite of pride is not thinking you're a bad person. The opposite of pride is when you're not thinking about self. How do I build self-esteem? You've got low self-esteem. You don't run around, I'm better than everybody. Who's got the answer? What's the clearest way to build self-esteem? Do esteemable actions. Duh. That's how you do it. Do esteemable actions and you'll develop self-esteem. That's not pride. But if you have a need in your mind to judge other people, oh yeah, they're not good at this, and they're not good at that, and I'm just a little better than that. That's pride. Or, oh, I wish I could do that, and I can't do this. They're better than me. That's also pride. So the way to be out of pride is self-forgetting. Focus on God, focus on service. Those are the great keys. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
These belong to the one born for the divine estate.
Yes. So it's a wonderful list. We've had now 3 shlokas that give us wonderful exercises in thinking, feeling, and acting. And I think I said this last week, the 12-step groups, they all say act your way into right thinking. And the metaphysicians will say think your way into right action. Yoga says yes. Why? Because intellect, mind, body, it's all one continuum. There's a visible and an invisible part. And as yogis, we work on it all. Change our behavior. Do the kinds of things that Krishna is suggesting. Change our thinking. Usually, a thought arises and then the feeling follows. For example, if you have a resentment for a past lover, the thought of the lover must come first, then the feeling will follow. So what we do is if the thought of the ex-lover comes, whether you believe it or not, bless that person and turn your mind to save them into service. All right, next shloka.
Dambho darpobhimanascha krodha parushyameva cha ajnanam chabhijatasya partha sampadamasurim. Hypocrisy, arrogance and self-conceit, anger and also harshness and ignorance belong to one who is born, Partha, for demoniac estate.
Demoniacal is, I think, how I would pronounce it.
Demoniac.
Yeah, demoniac estate. So here are the particular qualities of head and heart and action that many of us have that get in the way. So what's the first one?
Hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy. One of the things an honest person doing yoga will find is our tendency to hide a bad motive behind a good one. I'm really trying to compromise and do what the other person wants. When actually I'm just conflict avoidant. And what I'm doing is storing up resentment. Or I engage in gossip at work. Oh, this manager. Well, I'm just connecting with the other people. No, you're engaging in character assassination. Someone who's hurt your feelings sends you a text, a phone call, and you don't respond for a week. Oh, I'm just busy. I'll get to it. And in reality, I a little bit want to punish them. And also, I'm a little frightened of that conversation. So, this is the deep kind of hypocrisy that a yogi wants to avoid. This is the demoniacal state. So, a hypocrite walks the walk, but no, talks the talk, but cannot walk the walk. And you see it in all religions. People go to the church and they're very goody-goody and nice during the church service, and they go outside and scream and yell at each other in the parking lot. Or you go to a workshop, some spiritual retreat, and you put on your good behavior. God, I can't wait till this is over and I can go get a drink. Hypocrisy. So, what I encourage people to do not try to be a spiritual person. Instead, strive for authenticity. We can feel it when someone's trying to be a goody-goody and stuffing feelings, stuffing resentments and things like that. Sometimes we have a mind that's ulcerated with all sorts of kleshas, afflictions. And what we're looking for is a magic bullet, some spiritual pill. If I just go see this master, then they'll touch me on the head and all this stuff will go away. Or if I get some Ganga water, that'll do it. Or some magic bullet, some experience. I'm going to do an ayahuasca retreat. That's the latest thing people think. It's going to solve all their problems. Oh, I had all this stuff about my family of origin on the ayahuasca trip. Now I'm clear of it. Well, watch. And usually 6 weeks, 2, 3 months later, I have the same issues with parents or siblings as I did before. There's no shortcut. We have to work through the stuff in the unconscious. So being able to be honest with ourselves about what's really going on. If we are not aware of a klesha, we have no capacity to heal it. And, listen carefully, 90% of healing is awareness. When I can finally be still enough and honest enough to give up, they did this, they did that, they did such and such to, I have this character trait. I have this dosha, this defect, this klesha. This is my stuff. I'm aware of it. Then we usually have an intuitive sense of what to do. Any thoughts on this? Very important point. Next idea.
Arrogance.
Yes, arrogance. Where again, we have the need to let people know who's in charge. I was talking with someone this morning who's really pissed at their boss. Their boss keeps making snide, critical remarks, sometimes in meetings, cutting him down. He's really angry about it. One of the things that we began to see is, he has all this judgment about all sorts of people. And in fact, has judgment about his manager. Doesn't think he's doing a good job, doesn't think he's experienced enough to be in that position. Thinks he could probably do a better job at it. And you think the other person doesn't intuitively pick up on that? So the most difficult position for the ego to take, and the healthiest, is to be a worker among workers. To be in the middle. I'm not better than anyone. And then arrogance in reverse. That's much like pride. I'm worse than everybody. No, I'm just a dude. And we always want to watch out for spiritual arrogance. Oh, I am a student of Swami Beyondananda. I've had the darshan of Babari Babananda. I've been meditating for 110 years, even though I'm only 70 years old. Where we have what Trungpa called spiritual materialism, where we use the path itself as another ego possession. So the healthiest place to be is a premi, a lover of the infinite, a sevak, I'm a servant. We find many, many people have the name Das, something Das, Ram Das, Shiva Das. What does Das mean?
Servant.
Yeah. Or just identify, I'm just a yogi doing his practices or her practices. Yeah. Next idea.
Self-conceit.
Or this idea. So at the moment of self-realization, the recognition, the pratyabhijnana is not, I'm a realized person. I'm a deeper mukta. I'm a mahatma. I want everybody to start touching my feet. Oh. It's aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. I'm not a person. So here's another slogan to hang on to. If I think I'm a person, I'm under the influence of spiritual ignorance. No personal sense of self is true, is real. If you can get out of that and know you are that witnessing consciousness, fine. But if you can't, just be a jinyasu, seeker after wisdom, a mumukshu, a seeker after liberation, a sadhaka, somebody doing their practices. If we get conceited, oh, my mind is getting so quiet. I haven't had a flipping thought for weeks now. Don't worry, the Lord will go whack. Something will come up. Who's ever been bushwhacked by their mind? Yeah, self-conceit. Think we're in some state. Next idea.
Harshness.
Yeah, don't be a jerk. Harshness usually is our need to control, our need to get our way, a reaction and response to people who aren't meeting our expectations, who aren't being loyal. And we punch them, either verbally or with a scowl. We want to avoid responding to the need for redress or revenge. Titiksha. Next one.
Ignorance.
Yes. So the root cause of the demoniac state is always deep spiritual ignorance. First comes that avarana shakti, that veiling power of ignorance. Then comes the vikshepa shakti, the projecting power. I think I'm a person, and when I think I'm a person, I always feel there's not enough. I'll be happy when. I need more, better, different. Then starts the grind of samsara. We are under the compulsion of kartavya, obligatory action. That's what gets me into trouble. The root cause is ignorance. Next one.
I think that's the end of the attributes.
Okay, next shloka.
Devi sampad vimokshaya nibandhaya surimata mashucha sampadam devim pijatosi pandava. The divine nature is deemed for liberation, the demoniacal for bondage. Grieve not, O Pandava, you are born with divine qualities.
Yes. So earlier, the third chapter, I think it is, Krishna says, every being is impelled into action helplessly by the force of Prakriti. What can restraint do? So there are people who are born into this world. They may have a lot of abuse in their family of origin, or it may come from prior lives. But they can't help themselves. They act in the world in a way that is like this asuric state. How do I know if what I'm doing is asuric? Well, you can look at the list, or you can just check your heart out, because these things make me suffer. When I get sick and tired of being sick and tired, then there's a chance that my mind will turn towards the infinite. It is theoretically possible for us to grow spiritually simply through inspiration, out of a pure desire to know and love God. But it's very rare. Most of us enter the spiritual path as a response to our suffering. The way I've been living wasn't working. Maybe the spiritual path has something to help relieve the suffering. If not, I'm going to kill myself. Not an uncommon thought. So pain, suffering is frequently the touchstone to spiritual growth. So just because we have a period in our life of extroversion, of suffering, of egoism, doesn't mean that we are not meant for liberation. It means, as a response to that suffering, take up the spiritual path. Others of us from a very early age may have this, what I call divine discontent. Only this I want, but to know the Lord is all I really want in this life. Some of us are born that way. Doesn't mean we don't get sidetracked and suffer. Suffering brings us back. Suffering brings us back. St. Augustine had a very famous saying. Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. Now, most of us are a combination of the divine qualities and the demoniacal qualities. That's kind of the essence of Manushya Loka, the human condition. What are we to do? Do our best to eliminate those qualities of head and heart and action that are adharmic. Cultivate subhej, auspicious desires that are according to the Dharma. Any thoughts on this? Now, you would not be here in a Gita class on a Sunday night. You could be at the local bar's beer bust, but you're here. Don't worry. The very fact that you're here means that you are, to some degree, born with these divine qualities. You wouldn't have an interest in this. Next shloka.
द्वभूतसर्गो लोके अस्मिन् देव आसुर एव च देवो विस्तरश प्रोक्त asuram parta me shrudu. There are two types of beings in this world, the divine and the demoniacal. The divine have been described at length. Hear from me, O Partha, of the demoniacal.
So now he's going to go into a little more depth on the character defects, the doshas, the kleshas that we may have in addition to the divine qualities that on a very practical level stand in the way of my effectiveness. Now let's use a very practical example. So Deepa, you're a manager, right? I'm sure coming up in the corporate world or looking at colleagues, you've come across inexperienced managers who haven't had a lot of training, who manage through intimidation and fear.
Mm.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not uncommon. They think that's going to work. That's a demoniacal tendency.
It's interesting also to watch because it's not just intimidation, but it's also terrorizing people by being alarmist about things.
But in the end, is it effective?
Generally, the system votes them out in some way.
Yes. Because it may have a short-term gain, but in the long term, you build up too much resentment. And it does not create an environment conducive to productivity. If, on the other hand, you manage people and you are a servant leader, and what you spend your time doing is empowering your subordinates, providing them with ways to further their skill set, opportunities to be creative, then what happens?
Often, then the manager has to do nothing.
Not only that, the productivity increases. Isn't that so?
Yeah, happier people work better.
Yeah. So these descriptions of the divine and devilish estate are practical. I think all of us have been in interpersonal relationships. If in a personal relationship you try to be the most powerful, it's very funny. There are some cultural elements. In one of St. Paul's letters, he says, "Wives, obey your husbands." A lot of guys who are fundamentalists want a Christian marriage. Woman, you have to do what I say. Do you think that makes for a happy marriage? What's your experience? People chafe at it. So it's practical in relationship, power-driven arguments. Anybody ever got caught up in power-driven arguments in a relationship?
Mm-hmm.
What was that nonviolent communication that you turned me on to, that book.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah. What's the intent of it?
I mean, the premise is that you stay rooted in factual observation and notice the dynamic between feelings and needs. Good feelings come from your needs being met. Negative feelings come from your needs not being met. And at the end, you make requests. And a correct request is not a demand. So,
And why is it ideally successful?
because when done right, it doesn't, the other person does not end up taking things in a defensive way.
Yeah. So that is communicating in accordance with some divine principles, I think. And it's practical. You don't end up murdering your spouse or walking out. All right, going on. Oh my gosh, it's already 5 o'clock. Couple.
प्रवृत्तिं च निवृत्तिं च जना न विदुरासुराः न शौचं नापि चाचारो न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते. The demoniac
Whatever.
know not what to do and what to refrain from. Neither purity nor right conduct nor truth is found in them.
So when the mind is in ignorance, first comes the delusion, then comes the illusion. We do not know what to do. At the beginning of Gita, Arjun says, I'm confused as to my doing. So one of the marks that we probably have some work to do is when we're in that mind state of confusion. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I move here? Should I move there? Should I take this job? Should I take that job? Should I say this? Should I not say this? I'm not clear. So that is a mark that I've got something to work out. I'm confused. I have delusion and the subsequent illusion. I'm blinded to what is right action. Next idea.
Next idea or sloka.
Next idea. We'll go through them.
The demoniac know not what to do and what to refrain from, neither purity nor right conduct.
So, neither purity, meaning they allow the mind to indulge in all sorts of adharmic thinking. You can't expect to be an effective yogi when you spend the whole morning stewing in resentment over someone or reviewing your misery, indulging in self-pity. We think it's harmless, but it's not. It's not. So we have to work on some purity of mind. We are not healed by what we turn from, but by what we turn to. Don't worry. I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to think about that. Think about God. Think about service. And probably the greatest, simplest way to get out of that self-reflection that's so painful is take an interest in someone else's problems. You were on my mind, thought I'd give you a call. How are you doing? And then listen. And make an effort. Do the laundry. Take a bath. Do the dishes. Vacuum the floor. Dust the furniture. Endeavor to live in a sattvic environment. Next one.
Nor right conduct.
So we do things that shoot us in the foot. So for example, if you are out late at night and you're doing drugs and getting drunk, and as a result, you're late for work chronically, or you don't show up at all, it's not your boss's fault if you get fired. Or if you gossip at work and you are called on the carpet, it's not your boss's fault. Or if you're working from home and you don't put in your 8 hours a day, you put an hour and a half in and spend the rest of the time on social media. Don't be surprised. What do they call it? A PIP? Is that right? Personal improvement plan?
Performance improvement plan.
Something like that. You know, you'll get found out. You'll get caught. So we don't know what to do. Next idea.
No truth is found in them.
Yes. So one of the problems with the person with the asuric mind is we lie. Cover up, say, come up with an excuse, tell a fib, tell a lie. Or like some politicians, if you're going to lie, tell a big one and repeat it a lot. Oh, it's so gross. So gross. But for example, some of us who may have some shame about our history may make up a history to tell people. I'm thinking of a young man whose father was in prison for murder. He died in prison. But this young man was ashamed to tell people about his father. So he made up a story. Understandable, but not satya, not straightforwardness, not truthfulness. You say you're supposed to be at an appointment at 4:00, and on the way you stop and get a coffee latte, and you're 20 minutes late, and you say, "Oh, I got caught in traffic." It's a lie. So the asuric personality is always making stuff up to cover their rear end. Okay, is there more in this shloka?
No, that's it.
Okay, it's 8:00. This is a good place to stop. What verse are we on for next week?
Verse 8.
Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.